What's up, guys? My name's David, if you don't know. I've been riding BMX for about 15 years now. I'm making my first video. I figured I'd make it a useful one. I get asked a lot to build people's wheels for them or true people's wheels for them. So I figured I'd show you guys how to do it. Obviously, first things you need your hub, your rim, your spokes, your nipple, and your rim strip. So you also need a spoke wrench. If you don't have a truing stand, you will need a pair of forks to true a front wheel, or you could use the dropouts of a frame to true a back wheel. So before you get started though, you need to know the spoke length that you need to build your wheel. So they have a few different websites that you can use. I'll link this website in the description. You want to find a website that has your hub in the drop-down selection. Select your rim, make sure it's the correct size, and you should get your results. And to go a little bit more in depth on why you need a certain size spoke, your hub diameter varies based on the hub you have. And also your effective diameter of your rim also varies. That would cause your spoke length to vary. And just to show you guys what I will be lacing up, I have this old Rant Party On hub that's been sitting around forever, and then this Alienation Deviant rim. Once you figure out your spoke length, the first thing you need to do, grab 9 spokes. What you're gonna do is you're gonna put a spoke in every other hole facing this way. All right, so you can see every other hole. So now you're gonna grab your rim. You wanna make sure you start at the valve stem hole. So that hole right there. Now it's really important you pay attention to which hole that you put it in on the rim. So obviously you wanna make sure if you're putting spokes in from the left side, you wanna make sure you go in the left side hole on the rim. So as you can see, the spoke hole is on the left, as is the hub flange. Now that you've started one spoke in the hole, grab one nipple, tighten it down until it hits the end of the thread. Once you have the first spoke started, the pattern you have to remember is going to skip 3 holes and put it in the 4th hole. Disregarding the valve stem hole, that's obviously not a spoke hole. This spoke is in this hole, you're gonna skip 1, 2, 3, and put it in the 4th hole. Remembering to tighten the nipple down to the end of the threads. So as you can see, every spoke has 3 holes in between them, and I didn't cross any spokes or anything. You want all the spokes to be straight at this point. So this next step is very important. So if you look, see how that spoke lines up in between those 2 holes? You want to make sure you put it in the right hole and not the left hole. So once you have found the right hole, you're going to do the same pattern, putting the spokes in facing that way, skipping 1 hole in between, and put all 9 spokes in. So once you have put all 9 spokes in, each spoke should line up to the right of the spokes that you already have in. And this should follow the same pattern you did on the other side, to where it skips 3 holes and you put it in the 4th. So now that you have the other 9 spokes in, it should look something like this. So now this next step is also very important. You're gonna grab the hub and rotate the rim. And you want to make sure that all the nipples start coming out of the rim. Now there's a way to determine which way you should rotate this, because obviously you could rotate it either way, and there's a right and a wrong way to do this. So if you look at this wheel that's already built, notice how the valve stem is cleared of the spokes. They don't cross over the valve stem whatsoever. So in order to determine if you have spun the hub the correct way, you have to know the pattern of which these next 9 spokes are gonna go. All right, so you're gonna take your next 9 spokes and you're gonna put them in the remaining holes left in the hub. You're gonna put them in the opposite way that these spokes are facing. All right, so now that you have your 9 spokes in, the pattern you're gonna wanna follow. So if I take this spoke, it's gonna cross over 1, 2, 3 spokes. And the pattern that you wanna follow is you wanna go over, over, under, and then skip 1 hole. So now if you notice, the hub is spun to the left, so the spokes are angled that way. So now that I've taken my spoke facing this way and crossed over, over, under this spoke, and then skipped the hole, notice how it crosses over the valve stem hole. That means I spun the hub the wrong way. So now if you notice, I have the hub spun to the right, and now the spokes are angled this way. And I've taken my spoke here, I've went over, over, under this spoke, skip a hole. So again, the pattern is over, under, skip a hole. You can see that the spokes do not cross over the valve stem hole at all. So again, the way to determine if the hub is spun the correct way, find the spoke that is gonna follow the pattern over, under, skip a hole, and find that one that's gonna be right next to the valve stem, and always start with that one. That way you don't get all 9 of these spokes in and get to the last spoke and it happens to be the valve stem spoke and you notice you cross it over and you have to redo it. So now I'm gonna take the remaining 8 spokes and do the same exact over, under, skip a hole pattern. Okay, if you notice, it's starting to look like a wheel. Also, just a reminder, make sure you're still tightening each nipple to the end of the threads of each spoke. When you get to the end, you shouldn't have to do much truing. It should come out pretty straight. So now you're gonna grab your remaining 9 spokes. You're gonna repeat exactly what you did the other side. You're going to put the spokes in the opposite way that these are facing and repeat the same over, under, skip a hole pattern. All right, so if you followed the pattern correctly, you should have all the spokes in. Toss your wheel on your forks, start tightening the spokes. All right, so you don't need it that tight, as long as you can spin the wheel and it not move around. So you wanna make sure you always start at the valve stem hole, and you wanna tighten each nipple the same amount of turns all the way around. Start out with about 4 or 5 turns. Around the whole wheel, and I tightened each nipple about 5 turns, and as you can tell, still really loose. So I'm gonna go back around and do about 5 more turns. You don't wanna start off with too many turns. If you get halfway around the wheel and they end up being too tight, you have to go back and loosen some, and you never wanna have to do that because you might lose track of where you were, and then now some spokes are way tighter than others. So once you get all your spokes tightened down, you want to make sure they're not too tight, like I said. So make sure you can still squeeze them. A good indicator that they are tight enough too is they should be at the very top of the nipple. The spoke is flush with the top of the nipple. If you tighten them all about the same amount of turns throughout the whole process of lacing the wheel, then the wheel should come out relatively straight. So when it comes to truing a wheel, a couple of tricks you can use if you don't have a truing stand. Get 3 zip ties. What you want to do with the zip ties, attach them to the forks, cut them to where they are just barely making contact on each side. So take your 3rd one and put it to where it's underneath the rim, so that way you can find pops in the wheel if there are any. Now, getting good at truing wheels does take time. The biggest key to it is don't overcompensate. Do half turns or quarter turns at a time, unless the wheel is way off. So when it comes to truing a bend out of a rim, what you want to do is find out where it's touching. So it's touching right there. If these spokes on the right side, closest to the zip tie, are over tightened, then you're going to want to loosen these. But if these aren't over tightened, then you're going to want to tighten the opposite side that it's touching. Like I said, only do quarter or half turn increments. It does not touch anymore. But notice we still have a small bend in it. We're gonna want to adjust this side as well. You wanna go back and forth and just kind of feel it out. And like I said, this takes time. This takes practice on knowing what you're doing. So don't get frustrated. Just try to get the best you can. So when it comes to getting a hop out, so obviously any high spots you're gonna wanna tighten down. Any low spots, if they're over tightened, then loosen them a little bit. Hops are pretty tricky to get out, and like I said, all this takes time and trial and error. This is a used rim. It's not 100% perfect because it has been ridden for quite a while, but so again, when it comes to truing, it does take time, it does take practice. If you are lacing brand new rims or brand new spokes, it does take time for the spokes to stretch. Lace it up, get it as best as you can, ride it for a few sessions, retighten the spokes, retrue it, and then that's when you can really try to get it absolutely perfect. The last step is putting your rim strip on. And there you have it. All right, I appreciate you guys watching. If you have any questions, I will link my Instagram in the bio. Also, check us out on Narmar YouTube. We got a bunch of BMX content on there coming out. So I appreciate you guys watching. Peace.